Howdy folks, Kaloth here. I hope you're doing well this morning. It is Sunday, June 2nd. I'm sitting here having my coffee, and I figured I'd get into my favorite topic, and that is speculation around Galaxy of Heroes. If you know me from Discord, which of the people who watch this channel, I think a lot of you do, I spend basically all my time in the speculation channel for the Galaxy of Heroes events Discord. While I may not like the some of the aggression and hostility that comes around, arguing about which Star Wars era I like and which one is, not great, it's a common joke in the channel that, oh no, its sequels suck a clock. I like us all to get along, but while I don't like that, I love playing the connect the dots game, right? I love looking at where is Star Wars media right now. What do we know from data mines? What do we know from past precedent from CG? What do we know from what Meathead has said? And trying to piece together the puzzle. And I think we've got a pretty good indication as to what's coming next. So I'm putting this out here mostly to just talk about it. Like I said, it's one of my favorite topics. Also to see if we're right, because some of this stuff I've been saying in the channel for months, and I really think it's going to be true, even though I think I'm one of the only ones who think that, at least in that channel. So, want to get into it. What do we know is coming? Well, we know that the Phantom Menace content cycle is coming to an end, right? CG broadly works in quarterly content cycles where all of the releases are kind of honed and pointed towards one particular focus, either a new game mode like a raid, or a particular capstone journey events like a meta fleet, a galactic legend, a new legendary, things like that. This current content cycle has all been around the Phantom Menace 20th anniversary. It has been focused on the Naboo raid, which we know from comments from CG is coming late July, early August. We've had 7 marquee units, which was actually a huge number of marquees for a content cycle like this. And 2 capstone units, being Queen Amidala from Conquest and Jar Jar Binks as a legendary. Amidala is available now. Her 3 conquests with her in the premier reward slot have come to an end. Early adopters have her unlocked already. Latecomers still have, the next conquest cycle where she'll be the secondary reward. But that next conquest cycle is starting a week from tomorrow. And because CG updates on Wednesdays, we can pretty well assume that the next conquest unit is going to be in just a few days. It's going to be in that update on June 5th with a kit reveal probably coming a day or two before. And where kit reveals had previously been on Tuesdays, here lately they've been on Monday. So it could be as early as tomorrow that we know what's coming in Conquest. So what do we know about what's coming? Well, we have data mines that point us to character bundles that are coming. If you watch the data mines from Barbarossa in the Barbarossa and Sig in the Galaxy of Heroes event server, these data mines will often list what's coming in the new updates, and you'll see marquee bundle X or chase bundle Y. Those usually signify that a new marquee unit or a new ship chase are coming, right? So one of the first indications that we're getting a new marquee is when we data mine marquee bundle X, and then X being a number and they're incremental, so I think we're in the 50s now. And marquee bundle 51 or something may end up being, hey, that was STAP. Okay, great. We now know what that was. Currently, what we have are 3 chase bundles that were data mined relatively recently. They don't correspond to anything in the game yet, so we don't know what they are. I say usually these are ships because the last chase bundle threw everybody off. Everybody assumed, hey, we've got a chase bundle data mine, that means we're getting a new ship. And then that chase bundle, that shop pack that was called Chase Bundle, I don't remember the number. It was some number, Chase Bundle 9, Chase Bundle 10. that ended up being Jar Jar Binks, and as we all know, at least outside of our nightmares, Jar Jar Binks is not flying around in space. So there is some wiggle room to say, well, okay, that's not necessarily ships, but by and large, we can assume that there are 3 ship chases coming in the near future, in the next couple of months, which points to this whatever the new content cycle is. We also can point towards the different freebies that are available in the game. Almost always, the freebies in the web store, and especially the login calendars, usually point to something. They don't always point to the main content cycle, right? They could just mean, hey, the Bad Batch Season 2 is coming out, so let's put some Bad Batch in the calendar. It's been a year since we've released Jabba the Hutt, so let's put some of his requirements in the calendar. It's the, Ahsoka Season 1 is coming out, so let's put out some Ahsoka stuff. It's not always necessarily tied to the content cycle, but it almost always is tied to something. What are the login bonuses for June? Well, the calendars are Scout Trooper and Death Trooper, both Imperial Remnant. And then the web store stuff are Night Sisters. Now, if you are averse to spoilers, go away. I'm not going to get real into it. But what we know is if you connect Imperial Remnant and Night Sisters, that points to one of 2 characters, really. And that is Thrawn and Morgan Elsbeth from Ahsoka Season 1, right? Thrawn allied with the Night Sisters. Morgan Elsbeth was a Night Sister who was tied to Thrawn and the Empire / Imperial Remnant. They appeared in Ahsoka Season 1. Morgan appeared, in The Mandalorian Season 2. Of course, Thrawn has appeared several other places, including the old Expanded Universe, Star Wars Rebels, and then, of course, the most recent appearance of both was in Tales of the Empire. So, Imperial Remnant on its own doesn't mean a whole lot. It could mean a number of things. Imperial Remnant plus Night Sisters really means one of those 2. What else do we know? We know that here recently, Defense of Dathomir, the recurring event, ended up being bugged. People couldn't complete it. And this came as a surprise to people if you weren't following Datamine. If you had been following the Datamine, if you talked to the data miners, they actually noticed a couple of weeks beforehand, hey, something changed with General Grievous in that event. What changed was tagging him as a raid boss. That could mean that maybe they're using General Grievous in the upcoming Naboo raid. Maybe they are doing a reskinned General Grievous in the Naboo raid because Grievous doesn't necessarily fit the timeline. Maybe there's something coming up in the next Conquest that will use General Grievous and they changed this version of his PvP model because he has several PvE. He has several PvE kits where he has shown up in Conquest before he showed up in the old tank raid. So maybe this is that. Maybe they're just changing this PvE model because they're planning on using it somewhere else. Or maybe they're adding a 3rd tier to Defense of Dathomir and are making preparations for it. We've seen things like this before. We saw the Lord Vader event get bugged because of changes made to the PvE version of Admiral Trench, because Admiral Trench was coming to the game as a playable PvE unit, and the game differentiates a playable PvE unit compared to an NPC PvE unit. So there were changes there. That was the first indication that Trench was coming, is because it changed in the event. Same with Ben Solo. Ben Solo changed in the Rey event where, you're actually, I don't remember if it's Rey or the Sith Eternal Emperor. Maybe the Sith Eternal Emperor event it was. Either way, there's a fight where on one side is Sith Eternal Emperor, on the other side is Rey and Ben Solo. That event got bugged. Well, wouldn't you know it, a couple weeks later, Ben Solo showed up. So we know changes have been made to Grievous. We don't quite know what that is. But that's another point that we have kind of in the mix. So what can we put together from this? Well, I'm just going to stop rambling and come out and say it. I think it's this guy. Sorry this is cut off a little bit, but I think we're getting a Thrawn GL. I think he's going to be coming in September. I think that Morgan Elsbeth is going to be the Conquest unit coming this week. You'll have 3 months to unlock her, which means she'll unlock sometime in September, right around the time that we would expect to see Thrawn. I think overall, I just think that's where all the signs are pointing. I've got a few things listed here, on the pros side in favor of a GL Thrawn. He's arguably the most recognizable figure from the pre-Disney EU. Back in the 90s, if you were a Star Wars fan, the original trilogy had ended. The prequel trilogy, we didn't even know would be coming. Star Wars was propped up by novels, by comic books, by what they called the expanded universe, is now called Legends. And Thrawn, who was the kind of the primary antagonist in the trilogy that started with a book called Heir to the Empire, Thrawn was kind of the most popular character from that era. He's shown up in Rebels. He's shown up in all the media that I mentioned before, and he's being built up as kind of this primary antagonist in both the Mandalorian show and in Ahsoka. We know there's an Ahsoka season 2 coming. We know there's a Mandalorian movie coming, and it looks like there's going to be a New Republic era movie separate from the Mandalorian movie. Thrawn is kind of being set up as the Thanos, if you will, from that. So he's very popular. He's not a movie character yet, but at some point, CG is going to have to move away from movie characters. For their Galactic Legends, Thrawn makes the most sense. Or Thrawn is one of the ones that makes sense. The Mandalorian and Grogu are another one that, they've never appeared in movies. They work as GLs. He's got a ton of new options to bring into the game as his supporting cast, marquees and such that you could bring in. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And he's got plenty of support from existing units that are maybe at low relics, or are, the typical kind of filler you would have to bring in for a Galactic Legend. And then the Imperial Remnant itself, right? In this example, a Thrawn GL would be an Imperial Remnant GL. They're poised to be the main villain in this era of Star Wars, in the New Republic era. And like I said, he's being set up as the Thanos of that era of Star Wars media. Now, what do we have working against it? He only just returned to the galaxy at the end of Ahsoka Season 1. So Imperial Remnant Thrawn really hasn't done much as Imperial Remnant Thrawn, right? Everything we know about Thrawn mostly comes from Star Wars Rebels, mostly comes from the books, mostly comes from the old legend stuff that's not technically canon anymore. Also, we got our kind of capstone Imperial Remnant leader for now. Dark Trooper Moff Gideon still has a fairly low adoption rate. He's not even in Proving Grounds yet. The Imperial Remnant really are at a good state to where maybe you don't need a GL for that faction yet. And then also we know that the movies are coming out, right? And we know that he's going to be a primary antagonist. So there's reason to say CG might wait for Thrawn, might wait until he's in the movie, might wait for an Ahsoka Season 2. The only counterpoint to that is that there's so much in Ahsoka already that you can pull some of this stuff in and still have plenty left behind that you can bring back in anticipation of Season 2, in anticipation of the movies, that kind of thing. So what would a theoretical Thrawn journey look like? I actually put this together before we got the login units and before I started thinking Morgan would be a conquest unit. I was planning a whole video. I was going to go over the different options for this year's GL because I did think there were several options. This feels like the right one now. We've got, again, this is all theoretical. This is hypothetical. If you were to take something like this with existing units being Grand Admiral Thrawn, Stormtrooper, Death Trooper, Dark Trooper Moff Gideon, Dark Trooper, Night Sister Initiate and Acolyte, Ezra, Hera, and Fulcrum Ahsoka. That is really... That's a mix of characters that everybody has at kind of mid relics but would need to take up higher. A couple that are at low relics that you would need to buff, up a little bit. But all connected to Thrawn and Thrawn's character development. Now, note, I said I made this slide actually before we had all this. One of the other things I made this slide before was the Night Sister Lightspeed bundle. I mentioned here this hypothetical would be Night Sister Initiate and Acolyte at Relic 3. Anybody who bought that bundle has them at Relic 3 anymore. So, I don't know if that could happen. But this is just, again, this is hypothetical. It's an example. It shows how easily you could put together a Thrawn GL journey, and it makes sense, right? And then for new units, you have things like the Imperial Praetorian Guard that showed up at the end of Mandalorian Season 3. Keep in mind that when all that happened, when the Praetorian Guard shows up, when we had that, Mando and Bo versus Moff Gideon, the context of that is that Moff Gideon is there. He is talking to these Imperial warlords. Who are they talking about? They're talking about Grand Admiral Thrawn. They're all telling Gideon, "Hey, Gideon, stop with your cloning stuff. Stop pursuing, Grogu. What we really should be working on is building this up and bringing Thrawn back." So Imperial Praetorian Guard would make sense. Balin and Shin from Ahsoka Season 1 make a ton of sense. Morgan Elsbeth is the one that I think is the slam dunk. Because similar to how Leia, her requirements were mostly Rebels with kind of a minor Ewok sub-theme, and then Leia got an additional event tier for what was the Ewok event, right? Endor Escalation was the Ewok event. It wasn't necessarily the Rebel event. But Leia got that, third reward tier. I think it's very possible that Thrawn comes with a minor Night Sister theme and gets the third tier of Defense of Dathomir, which we've seen changes to with Grievous as his kind of GL event. So, when do I think this is happening? If I'm right, and I very well may not be, this is completely wild speculation. If I'm right, Morgan Elsbeth will be the Conquest unit that will come out on June 10th. Her kit will be spoiled later this week. We'll get her added to the game in an update on June 5th, and then we will have 3 months, so June, July, and August, to unlock her. Then, in September, we'll get a Galactic Legend Thrawn with Morgan Elsbeth, the Conquest unit, as one of his requirements. And that follows the basic pattern that CG has always followed, right? Or has, in recent memory, followed, right? The first content cycle of the year is tied to a legendary. So this year it was Jar Jar Binks. The year before that it was Cal Kestis. The year before that it was Grand Inquisitor. Then the second content cycle is tied to a ship, right? Last year it was Leviathan. The year before it was Profundity. And then the third conquest cycle in the fall is a Galactic Legend. So again, last year Leia, the year before that Jabba. Notably, Leia and Leviathan, their requirements overlapped a little bit, right? In June, we were doing the TIE Dagger, we were doing the Mark 6 Interceptor last year, while at the same time we were getting the Captain Rex marquee. Before that, you were getting Profundity requirements at the same time that you were getting Jabba the Hutt requirements. Keep in mind, again, Leia came out in the fall, Jabba came out in the fall, Captain Rex came out in June, Bausch and Chrysanthemum and all those came out in June. So, my assumption is that we're getting Morgan as a conquest unit that's going to lead into a Galactic Legend Thrawn this fall. So, what's coming this summer? It's a fleet, right? It's got to be a fleet, and I probably could have spent more time talking about that since that's what's next, right? I don't know that I'm confident as to what that is. There are several options. People have been talking about Trench, mostly because Trench has Admiral in his name. I don't see any indication that there's anything pointing to a new Separatist fleet. CG has made it clear that their position on fleets is that 5 ships, so 3 in the starting lineup, 2 in the reinforcements, is a complete fleet, which means that Separatists at the moment have a complete fleet. To make a second complete fleet, you would have to add in 5 new ships. I don't see that happening. We don't have any indication that that's going to happen, and I don't think that they would put Malevolence on mothballs, so I don't think that Trench is super likely, but he's definitely on the table. People also talk about a Mandalorian fleet, right? We've got new Mandalorians. We've got Bo-Katan Mandalore. We've got Paz Vizsla, and we had a pretty visually striking spectacle in Mandalorian Season 3 that dealt with a Mandalorian fleet. Again, the problem there is just the number of ships that would have to be added for that. And it would take away Razor Crest from Executor, which is its own problem. I do think that there is an off chance that we get Red 5. It has been asked for ever since this game released. It's very easy to see a journey that builds, instead of to a capital ship, builds to something like Red 5. Still has the same level of requirements as a capital ship would, but instead builds to Red 5, which serves as a major lifter for an existing fleet. In this case, you would assume it would be Home 1. Definitely think something like that could happen, but if I had to put my money on it, I think we're getting a Jedi fleet, right? I don't know that there's anything pointing to this except for the fact that CG likes symmetry. They like things that kind of have counterparts to each other, though they're very much not bound to that. And that's something that they tried to make clear after Lord Vader with Galactic Legends, is that they didn't want to be bound to making counterparts, right? But there's a world where CG decides, well, last year we did a generic Sith fleet with a Sith Empire sub-synergy. This year, let's make a Jedi fleet with an Old Republic sub-synergy. There's easily a world where you could see an Endar Spire that would be crewed by Jedi Knight Revan. Even though that's a lore break, Jedi Knight Revan never really commanded it. Darth Revan really wasn't the commander of Leviathan either. So, and again, CG likes their symmetry. And then you bring in things like, the Mantis. Give that to Jedi Knight Cal Kestis. That was his ship in Jedi Survivor. It was, of course, captained by Grease in Jedi Fallen Order. I do not think we're getting Grease in the game. But you could easily do that, right? You could give the Mantis to Jedi Knight Cal Kestis. That could be a Jedi ship. Yoda's Starfighter has been in the game forever, in the game files, just ready to be released. Yoda's Starfighter would easily fit. Things like you could even give Ahsoka's ship from Ahsoka Season 1 to like Ahsoka Tano Fulcrum if you wanted to. You could do the Jedi Consular ship from the Phantom Menace and give that to the 2 new Marquis that we've recently gotten, Padawan Obi-Wan and Master Qui-Gon. There are a lot of different things you can do there. So if I had to put my money on it, I would say that we're getting a Jedi fleet, but there's really no telling. We've got the Imperial Remnant and the Night Sister freebies in June that really point towards something Morgan Elsbeth or Grand Admiral Thrawn related. So maybe it's the Eye of Sion, the ship that Morgan Elsbeth constructs in Ahsoka Season 1 to eventually travel between galaxies and go recover Grand Admiral Thrawn and his Star Destroyer, the Chimera, from that other galaxy. That would definitely be a visually striking ship. It would definitely fit what CG is likely to do with, meta fleets. It's a kit that would almost ride itself, right? Where you've got this big hyperspace ring that's building up to an ultimate, and then when it hits that ultimate, it goes off to the other galaxy, comes back with Chimera, and then has, greatly enhanced abilities. You could even see Morgan Elsbeth being the fleet commander for that, as she was really the one who commanded the Eye of Sion, not Thrawn. But the problem there is I don't see much of a supporting cast for that. I mean, you could do a couple of generic Imperial Remnant ties, which is definitely something they could do. Shin from Ahsoka Season 1, she had a ship. Marok, the kind of reanimated Inquisitor, he had a ship. So it's possible. It just, I don't know, it doesn't feel as likely as something like a Thrawn GL, just because I do think a Thrawn GL has all of the logical components for a GL, where an Eye of Sion fleet maybe doesn't. But maybe. But whatever is coming, we will know in a couple days. So this is me rambling. This is me putting my wild theories out there beforehand, so that in a couple of days we can either point and laugh and say, haha, look, Kaloth was super wrong. Or maybe I got it right. I definitely didn't get any of my speculation around the Leviathan right. So, maybe it's time to redeem myself. But I hope everyone is well. These kind of conversations on Discord and on Reddit and social media tend to skew really negative. I've seen so much aggression and hostility and negativity where you'll get two people just kind of talking, hey, I'd really like to see this. Yeah, I really liked it. And then you'll have a third person who wasn't involved in the conversation at all just zoom in and say, no, this is terrible. I hate it. The sequels are awful. The prequels are awful. The TV shows are awful. Star Wars fans can be awful to each other. And maybe we should stop that, right? Maybe we should have a better way of interacting with each other. Maybe instead of saying, well, this was garbage, this was trash, maybe we say, you know what? This wasn't for me. I didn't particularly care for it, but I'm glad you did, and just leave it at that. I think we could all stand to be a lot nicer to each other. And I think this goes for any number of things, not just our silly little mobile game and our fictional universe about space wizards. So I hope you all are well. Thank you for watching. May the Force be with you.